You had a disagreement with a family member. Your supervisor just spoke to you in a rude way. Maybe a friend has not met your expectation. Maybe your parent or your sibling is not giving you the necessary respect. All of these things create internal friction for us, and this impacts several parts of our life. If this is something that you are experiencing, stay with us, because in today's conversation, we're going to be unpacking specifically why relationships, or rather relationship stress, affects not just the relationship alone, it also percolates into all domains of our life, impacts our health, other relationships, our peace of mind, even our work. Now stay till the end, because I will be sharing with you the specific principles from the globally used Bulletproofing-Happiness Framework to understand how to resolve this. Also, I will be leading you through a small reflective exercise. So, once you understand the whole thing, it will make great sense for you by the end. You may also consider saving this video if this is something that you resonate with, so that you can come back to watching it again later. Let me start off. First, let's really understand why relationships begin impacting not just the relationship itself. What really happens over here? So, when you have an argument, when a particular relationship creates challenges for you, like I said some time ago, whether it was with a spouse, whether with the manager, your child, all of these obviously impact you in that moment. Now, what happens is there is an emotional charge, and the brain actually finds it difficult to compartmentalize and keep one challenge away and prevent it from affecting a different aspect of your life. So what ends up happening is that particular unpleasant conversation that made you feel angry, hurt, maybe even anxious, it stays in the background and it affects your outlook towards your other task. That may be your work. You're an ambitious professional. You want to really perform well. And when this emotional charge exists in the background, it becomes really difficult to do that. Also, another thing that happens in this case is that unresolved tension consumes your attention. So that particular incident which created tension within you, it's consuming your attention, and then you're not able to focus your best on the task at hand. That's why you probably end up replaying so many unpleasant conversations in your head and wondering why your day is not going so well. Let's move to the next part. Now I have something very interesting to share with you. These are the 5 hidden patterns of relationship stress that exist in people's lives. This is something that I'm going to share with you based on my own work with thousands and thousands of ambitious professionals across the globe. So, the first one, spousal friction. This might not come as a surprise to you. However, it is not the only source of relationship stress. Spousal friction essentially shows up as misunderstandings between a husband and a wife, lack of effective communication between the husband and the wife, and mostly as unfulfilled expectations between a husband and a wife, which slowly build over the years and create a silent friction within that important and probably the most important relationship in anyone's life. That's the first pattern. The second one is called the presence gap. Presence gap basically means that your challenge that you are facing in the day begins to affect how mentally present you are in any situation. So for example, supposing you had a very challenging day at work, or your work has just become so hectic that it's creating a lot of internal stress for you. Targets, feeling like fulfilling your superiors' almost unrealistic expectations. All these things play in the background. And what happens is you end up carrying those stresses back home. And then, even though you're sitting with your family, maybe even your friends, you're actually just physically present and not mentally fully there. That creates further relationship strains. That's what the presence gap really means. Let's move on to the third pattern. This third pattern is basically outside influences, and more specifically, one of the biggest such influences includes the family dynamics, and even more specifically, the in-law dynamics. In a relationship, a lot of the times, the stress doesn't come because of the two people involved. It comes from something outside. Maybe there are family expectations. Maybe there are family pressures. Sometimes there may even be unsolicited interventions from other family members. And that is why a lot of couples sometimes struggle, because the intervention unnecessarily creates strain between the two people involved. Let's move on to the fourth pattern. The fourth pattern, specific one that has shown up, is parent-child tension or generational trauma. Let me explain to you what that means. Between parents and children, sometimes a significant understanding gap develops because of the way they look at things. This really shows up mostly in young adults, meaning children that are young adults or teenagers. Because the way that they look at life and the way that their parents look at life has a big gap. And a lot of times, parents find it very difficult, and so do children find it very difficult, to actually communicate what they want with the other party. And that brings us to the fifth pattern. That's social isolation. So before I share this point with you, I want to remind you that relationship stress is not something that occurs just because of a poor work life or something challenging at home. It could be both or even either, and it actually ends up affecting all domains of your life. So when people have a lot of stress in their life, they're feeling anxious, they're not being able to feel confident in life, they slowly start wanting to isolate themselves from things that they used to enjoy. And one of those things is going to gatherings, being in social settings. And so that creates social isolation. So those are the 5 patterns that have shown up. Now, understanding this pattern is important because that's the first step towards solving it. So let's understand what solving it really entails. In my work across the globe with ambitious people struggling with certain relationship friction in their life, we have continuously used the following aspects of the Bulletproofing-Happiness Framework. The first is called pattern recognition or self-awareness. What that essentially means is building mental muscle to first understand how something else might actually be affecting what is happening right now in your life. As we spoke sometime earlier, one particular conversation with a spouse, a challenging conversation with the spouse, can actually affect how you are performing in your meeting at work today. A very challenging conversation where you felt undermined or not respected by your superior at work could actually come back and affect how you are feeling at home. So self-recognition is crucial over here to recognize that where you are experiencing that strain and friction may not necessarily be the source of that friction. Now, if this resonates with you, definitely share your thoughts on this as a phenomenon in the comments down below. I promise that me and my team will respond to each of you. Let's understand the other part of how to actually begin to solve this. For this, I introduce to you from the framework a concept called the expectation theory. Now, we've heard many times that expectations may be the source of our pain or psychological pain. It's a widely used concept and term, and yet we may not really understand this in detail. So let's unpack this a little bit. Look at one of your recent relationship strains. It's most likely that you believe that the behavior of another person, their action, their words, or maybe even their inaction, that has created the disharmony in your relationship. Let's unpack that a little bit in detail. When you look at it, is that particular behavior or action really the source of your friction? Or is it the fact that you unconsciously believe that that person should act or behave in a particular way? Or in other words, there is an unconscious expectation that that person must behave this way. Take your time, think about this. Replay the latest conversations that caused your stress right now if you want, and examine this theory. Once it begins to make sense, the next step is remembering this when the next time any kind of relationship disharmony shows up in your life. You unpack that by trying to isolate what is the real source of that particular relationship strain. Because once you get down to the source, that's how you can create real lasting transformation in your internal peace. Because possibly till now, we have all been blaming the other person for our disharmony. And when we recognize and understand the expectation logic, the control slowly begins to come back to us. This is not always going to be easy. Yet, if you give it a shot, I promise that it will give you long-lasting results if you consistently and diligently try it. Now, let me leave you with a little reflection exercise at this point, something you can try in the next 1 week. Every time you feel agitated and you are remembering something related to any relationship, professional or personal, that is making you feel unpleasant, start by just recognizing that there is a background emotional charge. Note down the moments in which this is happening. Use a pen and paper if you want, and explicitly try and recognize what is the conversation or which particular relationship is the cause of your strain in your life right now. And if you're willing to go deeper, then also try and pinpoint what is the particular requirement that you had that actually led to this disharmony. What is it that you needed from the other person? How did you need them to behave? Pinpoint that, and then you can take it from there. Now, if all of this resonates and you really want to start reducing the impact of relationship stress in all domains of your life, I want to summarize this whole thing for you. First, these patterns play out for everybody in their life. Everybody has relationship challenges. Let me share with you an interesting statistic over here as well. So, research published by the American Psychology Association shows that 80% of working professionals experience severe psychological stress. Also, more than 50% of those report that work stress bleeds directly into their home life. Now, that work stress a lot of times is due to undue relationship stress, politics at office, etc. Right? So, a lot of people face this. You're not alone. Second is understanding why this really happens. Third is recognizing the patterns that play out in your life that lead to this stress. And fourth is actively taking action to begin solving this. Because remember, these kind of internal patterns don't build up in one day, and they also do not get overcome in one day. You have to consistently apply them. And really, that is one tenet of the Bulletproofing Happiness Framework. That's really the one of the most important things that creates long-lasting change. Now, if this makes sense to you and you really want to reduce the impact of stress on all domains of your life, the next step is not watching another video or reading another book. It is understanding what are the hidden aspects or the hidden leaks of stress in your life. And for this, me and my team have created a professional grade stress resilience audit that you can find, the link of which you can find in the description below. This is complimentary and it will within 2 minutes help you to identify where stress is actually occurring in your life and what it's impacting and what are the various areas in your life that it is specifically impacting. That's the greatest starting point. So, do the reflection exercise, take the audit, and I will see you soon again.